I'm going to present today on quantum computing. Again, I'm not an expert on it. I'm learning, took a book out of the library from a famous physicist, and I'm not going to go into detail because I don't understand it all. But I am going to give you a high level sort of view of what this is, and so you can understand. And then we'll look at, we have 6 plays to look at. And so we are sort of running out of time. So let me talk about quantum in general, just so at a very simple level, which is something I use to explain it to people. And so I've tested out what I'm about to say, and people seem to understand it pretty easily because I try and explain it on the very simplest level. So in basic computing, um, you have in your original computers, you have machine language. And machine language is basically composed of ones and zeros. And that's how you originally program. It's all in ones and zeros. And when I first came to Washington, one of the forms of machine language, the most rudimentary, elementary forms, was called F8 assembler language. And the company I worked for had an F8 assembler machine. And it was basically lights, hundreds of lights. And it was basically a computer. And they taught me how to do some rudimentary F8 assembly language coding. And basically, as it was explained to me, the concept was a 1 represented electricity flowing through a gate. And when the gate was open, the electricity flowed through and the light was on. So that was a 1, a full value. And a 0 meant the gate was closed, so electricity couldn't flow through, so the light was off. So that's the basic concept of ones and zeros. And all computer code, the basic level is machine language, ones and zeros. Then in the mid-70s, we got involved in fuzzy set theory. And I was working in Texas for a transportation company affiliated with the University of Texas. And I worked with these 2 guys, one American and one was from Taiwan. And he became very famous. He went on to form the National Park Service of Taiwan. He was a geographer. And we published a paper. It was one of the first of 10 actual applications of fuzzy set theory in the United States. And we used it for, it was coded in Pascal, and we used it for a land use decision-making model. And the idea of fuzzy set theory is that you no longer have values of 1 or 0, you have values between 0 and 1. They're in a sense fuzzy. And so the idea of fuzzy set theory eventually became the term of fuzzy logics. And you've heard about this in your dishwashers and your washing machines, where they're advertised having fuzzy logics. And it means the code running has values between 0 and 1. And it's in a sense fuzzy. So that's basic assembly language, that's fuzzy set theory. So that leads us to quantum. So in quantum computing, you can have values. So quantum computing, it's an atomic level. It's the idea of physics, quantum mechanics. It's a physical thing discovered by Albert Einstein and several other prominent physicists. And the idea is that electrons become entangled. It can be other particles as well, but the main particle is electrons as opposed to protons, because protons have mass and electrons are much lighter. So electrons become entangled and they can be separated by huge distances, but they're still entangled. And that means they can simultaneously, the pair of electrons, have values of both 0 and 1. Okay. And you'll see articles. I just want to alert you to this. I'm going to try and alert you to some of the pitfalls and understanding this. You'll see articles where people will say we can now travel faster than the speed of light. So based on all the research I've done, no, it's a basic law of physics, which is still holding up. You cannot travel faster than the speed of light. But the idea that 2 particles become entangled, they can be separated by huge distances. So when one particle changes, the other particle changes. So it appears that they're traveling faster than the speed of light. But actually, information is not actually transmitted. But basically, if one particle has its spin going clockwise, the other particle will be counterclockwise. So the simplest way to explain this now, let's get down to some basic understanding. So if you know those puzzles, I'm sure you've all seen them, and I have one to show. Show and tell is always helpful. There's two kinds of puzzles you'll find in those puzzle books, and they're both involve mazes. And one of them, you start at the outside and there's an enter, and then you try and figure out the path to get to the middle. Is everyone familiar with that? When you've seen these mazes? Start at the outside and try and find a correct path to the middle. Then the other kind of maze is where you start at the outside, you go through the whole maze and try and get to an exit point, which you see on your chart. I don't know if any of you have done those. I've done hundreds of them. And sometimes they make them into little games. If you can see this, where you have a little ball and you start at the outside and you try and get to the inside. So the basic idea of quantum computers is this. If you have a regular computer, you're going to start at the outside and you're going to go through and find one path until you either get to the middle or get to the exit or get stopped. And then you'll try the next path, and then you'll try the next path, and then you'll try the next path. So that's a regular computer. So now a supercomputer does the exact same thing, one path at a time, but it's going lightning speed, so much faster than it starts going path, 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 until it finds the exit. With a quantum computer, you can simultaneously do all paths. You can test all paths at the same time. So it's going to be, they're saying, trillions of years faster than a regular computer, even a supercomputer. So that's the basic concept of quantum computers. And we're going to be able to use quantum computers in all sorts of areas, like trajectory of satellites, fine-tuning them, being able to observe the temperature in every single square inch of the entire ocean, used for weather forecasting, used for encryption, used for optimization, supply chain economics. We're going to be able to use quantum in a lot of different ways. So back earlier in the year, they had a hearing in the House of Representatives, and it went about 4 to 5 hours. And it was on Zoom. I listened. This is where I first really learned about it. I mean, in detail. And I listened for 3 hours. And there's some terms you need to know. These are the terms they're talking about. There's what's coming is the quantum economy, and people who are working in the quantum economy are known as the quantum workforce. Okay, and so quantum is coming up and it's coming fast. Now, the question is, and this is why I believe it's coming very quickly, is there a catalyst? And as I listened, and what was happening was each representative was getting up and they were talking about their state. So in the great state of Texas, we have our quantum computers located in this laboratory. Someone else stood up and said, in our great state of North Carolina, we have a quantum lab at the University of North Carolina. And each person was standing up. Now, what the whole hearing was about was the National Quantum Initiative. And it's up for renewal to be funded again. So here's my pitch to everyone. And I'm going to give you an example of this for you to just, I'm going to give you digress for just a second. I thought of this as an example. So many years ago, I had worked at MCI Telecommunications for 7 years consulting. And the treasurer and vice president of finance left. And he went to a small company called OmniPoint. And they were the first people, they had the East Coast and New York City license for mobile telephones. And so he invited me to leave MCI and come over and head up a PeopleSoft financial project, which I did for 2 years. And when he talked to me about it, he said to me, well, there's going to be this thing called mobile phones, and you're going to be able to get your stocks and your sports scores all on this phone. And I came over and it was a startup. We started at 90 people. And the next thing I knew, we had 500. And along the way, the stock had gone up a little bit and then was down. So I happened to run into the president of the one of the presidents. There was a CEO, but there were also presidents in Bethesda. And he said to me that it was in their charter, okay, it was in their charter that they had to get bought. And he said, so it's a no-lose situation. So what happened eventually was OmniPoint bought PowerTel and combined it under the OmniPoint name. Then they together, OmniPoint with PowerTel, got bought out by VoiceStream, and then VoiceStream got bought out by T-Mobile. So T-Mobile today is the original OmniPoint. If you go on the internet, look at the patents, you'll see they're all in the name of OmniPoint. And so that's what I did for 2 years. But the CEO told me there's no risk involved. So when the stock went down to $3 a share, if they're going to get bought out eventually, it's a no-lose situation because it can only get bought out at a higher price. Well, so, I went and bought a lot of shares. I told my mother, she bought shares. A couple other people I told wouldn't listen to me. I went to my friend, I talked to him on the phone twice. Then I made a pitch to him. I went over his house. I said, just buy 1,000 shares for $3,000. The most you can lose is 3,000. He wouldn't listen to me. Well, OmniPoint stock eventually went to 155, and the rest is history. So what I'm telling you all today, this is my opinion. I'm not saying to buy or do whatever on, but just take it in. You can research it on your own. I am telling you that in terms of the quantum stocks, what's coming up for renewal now, it's got out of the committee hearing, which I heard that day, is the NQI, the National Quantum Initiative. And this initiative is going to fund quantum, the quantum companies. It's $5 billion. Now, in my view, that's too little. It should be 5 times the amount. It should be at least 25 billion. But they're going to fund it for 5 billion. So personally, I don't see how all the quantum stocks, I think they have to go up when that quantum initiative gets passed. I expect the quantum stocks to go up. Sort of like when the CEO at OmniPoint said, it's in our charter to get bought out. That's just my opinion, but I think it's going to happen. Now, let me tell you about the catalyst. So as I listened to this hearing, a catalyst quickly emerged, and it sort of threw me off guard. But you know what? Everyone's worried. Remember the space race with the Russians? And what happened when that space race? They put up Sputnik. We freaked out. And the next thing you knew, John Glenn was in orbit. And right after that, a few years later, we had a man on the moon, right? There's a catalyst here, and it's the Chinese. A lot of people feel the Chinese are ahead of us in quantum, and they're very worried about it in terms of national security and breaking encryption codes and breaking our security. So that's the catalyst. And this is the reason, after listening to this for hours on this hearing about how worried everyone is as the Chinese, I was sort of totally caught off guard. I mean, they are really focused on this. And that's why I think there's a catalyst here to get quantum computing going. Now, there's different kinds of quantum computing, and I'm not prepared today to explain them all to you, which is why I'm trying to get a guest speaker in, because I still have to do a lot of research, but I'll just tell you the names. So the 3 basic kinds of quantum computing, there's gate-based quantum computing, there's annealing quantum computers, and there's ion trap quantum computers. So going back of the companies that we've been talking about the last few meetings, D-Wave, which is QBTS, and we're going to bring up the charts. D-Wave is annealing. They're focused on annealing, which is basically used for optimization. Annealing, and they do have gate computers as well. Then there's Rigetti, RGTI, which traders affectionately call rigatoni, and they are focused on gate-based computers. And then finally, there's IONQ, which is right here in the University of Maryland. They've set up a lab and everything, and I'm trying to figure out how to get our group a tour of that lab so we can see these quantum computers. The quantum computers look really bizarre. They're these tall things, and they're trying to get them to be at room temperature, but right now they're at minus, like, I think it's 579 degrees Celsius. It's colder than outer space. It's the coldest thing known to man. And the reason they're so cold is because the electrons are the key to quantum physics, and you want to keep the electrons stable. You want to control them. And the only way to shut them down is by making it extremely cold. And the big thing you're going to be hearing about, there's two things. One is how quantum computers can intersperse with AI and superconducting. We're looking at that. And they're also looking at how, oh no, I just lost my train of thought. With superconductors, and they're looking at the different kinds of quantum computers to solve different problems. So that's how I want to explain this very carefully. You're going to start to see, remember, we should all be aware of this. Everyone, if you don't know, this is Ethan's opinion, be very wary when it comes to articles by Seeking Alpha SA, The Motley Fool. Let's see, what's the other? I just blanked. Well, Seeking Alpha and The Motley Fool and what's it called? Oh, I'm blanking here. But Seeking Alpha, I get their articles on email. I mean, in the space of a week, also, and they have these searing headlines. I'll see an article that says sell Palantir immediately, and then a week later, the next headline will say from the same Seeking Alpha,
Bazinga.
Palantir is a great buy. So be aware of these. Zacks is another one. What most people don't know about Zacks research is that Zacks also just happens to have a Zacks investment arm. How about that? And they're not federally separated as they should be. So they manipulate stocks. They're already invested on the investment side, and then they come out with these articles trying to manipulate it. So be aware of that. Now, recently, maybe this is illegal to do it, but it's our meeting. There's this guy, Travis Hoium, Hoium, Travis Hoium. This guy is suddenly getting into quantum. Be very careful with this guy, because this guy was negative on solar stocks for years and cost investors a lot of money with his negative articles. I can tell you that 3 times he put out articles entitled the same title every time over several years, Dark Clouds Gather Over Solar. And when those articles came out, retail panicked and started selling. So be very aware of this. Now, let me tell you one other thing. This is a very key point in terms of investing. I want to really emphasize this, and I hope everyone hears me. They're going to try and manipulate this. So make sure you understand each company and know what you own. But they're going to try and manipulate this as a competition between the different companies. And I'm telling you, it's a sector movement. It's great that we have Rigetti, the gate, and the ion trapped, and the annealing computers, because each one of these quantum computers works better against various types of problems. Annealing works great against optimization. Ion trap may work better against something else. They all contribute. So there's not a race between all of them. We need them all to be able to do all the many things we want to do. Now, the reason I say this is already there was a hit piece that came out this week. Be aware of this, because I'm watching and processing all this. My philosophy on trading is follow the path of manipulation. I think these guys totally manipulate. And there's also been short reports attacks. Rigetti and D-Wave got attacked, and I think IONQ too got attacked this week by the Hindenburg and the Iceberg research. They're claiming all this stuff. So be aware of these short reports, because they don't know what they're talking about. And an article came out this week, I'm sure you all saw this, that the quantum computer from IBM came out, and they said it reached, what's it called? Quantum supremacy, whatever that means. I haven't researched that enough. But the implication of the article was nobody else, Rigetti, D-Wave, IONQ, they don't count anymore. IBM is the ticket. And that's what they're going to try and do. They're going to try and divide and create a competition among all of them. And I'm telling you, that's a false premise. So be aware of that in terms of your investing. They're all going to be important. what I'd like to see personally is, well, I'm lobbying, I want to be quantum czar. I want that role, but I wouldn't even know how to go about getting it. They just appointed an AI, and they've had IT czars in the federal government. I want to be the quantum czar, because you need a manager to bring all these efforts together. They're too disparate. I think all the quantum efforts need to be together. I'd like to see D-Wave and Rigetti and IONQ combine into one company. I think that would be great. IONQ just won a $55 million contract. D-Wave was used by two Chinese researchers recently to break lower level encryption, encryptions. I don't know if you saw that. Freaked a lot of people out, but they used the annealing computer to do that. Rigetti had an interesting article out this week. Let me just bring that up real quick, and then we'll get into the charts. I'm keeping track of the time. I didn't want to go past 9:10, and we're at 9:10. So let's see. Whoops. Come on. Where'd it go?
I just wanted to jump in. QUBT, a quantum stock, was also selected for a NASA contract very recently. So I don't know what kind of what type of quantum they're using, but yeah.
I was getting to QUBT. I was getting to that. Now I have played QUBT 3 times in the last 2 weeks and made money each time. But let me tell you about QUBT. I wasn't going to mention that. That's Quantum Computing is the name of the company. They are at least 10 years old, and they have the name Quantum in their name. And so people are buying it. But I don't see where they do quantum. Okay. I don't see it. They have quantum in the name. They do photonics, which is using photonic plates as part of the infrastructure. And I'm not saying that's not going to be important, but everyone thinks it's a quantum play. And I'm telling you, I have researched this. They do not have a quantum computer. Now, in the last week, first of all, they've had 2 offerings in the last 2 weeks, not one, but 2 huge offerings. First, I think was 100 million, was 150 million, and then a 50 and 100 million offerings to raise money. And I looked at their financials and they don't look very good, but I went ahead and bought them anyway because I was studying them. But those 2 offerings are supposed to be professionally closed by a PR that says our offering is now closed. So they didn't do it. So after the first one, I wrote IR. I can read you my letter. I wrote him quite a long letter. I wasn't nice. And I said, you need to be professional. You're acting like a bunch of amateurs. You need to put out a PR and close that offering so everyone knows it's closed. And the other thing was a short report came out claiming they really had nothing. Now, I don't believe in short reports, but I'm telling you, it raised questions as to whether they actually have a photonics foundry or not. So I wrote them a letter and I said, you need to defend the stock. And I said, it's the professional thing to do. And I said to them, I know you're going to get back to me and say it's not your policy. And I'm telling you, I'm already invested in your stock, because at the time I had an investment on that those days a couple of weeks ago. And they wrote me back and they don't want to do it. And I told them they're acting like amateurs. You've got to defend the stock. And so when I wrote back asking them, I said, send me photos of your foundry. And they said, well, we have photos. You can find them here and there. So I went, instead of now, what I would have done if I had photos, what I would have sent back to me photos. Here it is. But instead, they sent me on a 1-hour wild goose chase, looking at their monthly newsletter, looking at their Facebook, all this stuff. I don't see any photos of a foundry. So I'm very skeptical of them. I know they've exploded. If we have time, we can look at that chart too. But I was surprised today when they won a NASA contract. That did catch me off guard. So, but again, they're using the word quantum. I don't see where they have a quantum computer. So you gotta be aware of that. Let's see here.
Hey, Ethan, can I ask you about since you're the quantum czar, about the Google? Because that was what I thought was the quantum play. They had their Willow quantum computing chip, and
Right.
after Google went out, all the other quantum stocks seems to have jumped. So where does Google fit in with the quantum play? Are they a major
player in
it? Because all those other companies are very small.
It's Google, IBM, and the smaller companies. But the D-Wave computer was just used to adjust trajectories of satellites, which is a big deal. Here it is. Quantum Machines and RGTI announced successful AI-powered calibration of a quantum computer. So, so that is this Quantum Machines is in Israel, and that is a big deal. It's just a big deal, because they're combining AI with quantum. So I just wanted to mention that. You're right. The Google Willow chip is important, and that led to the spur also in all the quantum stocks. Let's bring up QBTS. Yeah, there you go. So you can see how this thing's gone up. And they've also had the CEO of D-Wave was on TV.
Yeah, this is what I was saying. You got the call of the year there.
Well, thank you, but I mean, I'm just trying to make money.
You didn't make money on this.
On what?
If you didn't make money on this, there's something wrong.
No, I have, but I'm not
Yeah.
selling. Yeah, I have. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, and again, they do, and some of the other things that D-Wave does is workforce scheduling, production scheduling, logistics routing, resource optimization, and more. Nearly every industry can benefit from annealing quantum computing technology. And it looks like there's a video with Dr. Baratz. So I'm trying to get him. Keep it to yourselves. I'm trying to get him for our meeting.
Did you call him?
No, not yet.
Oh.
I gotta, I gotta get that done this week.
Yeah, just call him up.
What, does anyone have any comments on the chart? I mean, I know we're, I hate when charts go straight up like that.
Well, I have a comment on the chart, okay?
Okay.
Right? Last meeting was my very first, and Ethan talked about these quantum plays, and he talked about QUBT and rigatoni and D-Wave. And the very next day, I did a little bit of research and looked at the potential, and I jumped in, and I got it at 167, as I said before, and I threw the kitchen sink at it, and I've made 65K in 1 month. So
Wow.
so yeah, it was amazing. Thank you, Ethan. Call of the year.
You're welcome.
Yeah, man. I mean, this was the last meeting day. It was right there on the 19th of, maybe it was the 20th.
Yeah.
No, it was the 19th of November. So we had this little pivot green bar day. That was the entry.
Yeah.
Are you still holding it?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
National Quantum Initiative is going to bring them higher. This is
Yeah.
just very early.
Yeah.
Again, with the Chinese catalyst, this is going to go faster than you think. I'm hoping that initiative gets approved in January. I mean, you would think each company would get something out of the $5 billion. I mean, it's not all going to go to Google and IBM. So
I think there's a high short interest as well, which may cause a little bit of a, upside swing as we're seeing right now, because they're going to have to cover with the intense volume we're seeing on this stock.
right. I don't know what happened today. They
Or
were
do you think
down.
the short interest was after 3 bumps up and maybe that last move was taking out the shorts?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So I wouldn't expect to see quite as much of an upside swing as we
No,
just saw, but
if you look at the monthly, I don't mean to interrupt you there, but this is the monthly chart, and I mean, this was an amazing play. Hats off. And yeah, probably long term it's higher, but notice it opened whenever it opened.
Yeah.
It opened back at, I don't know, 1050, 1060. And then it based here just under $10 for it looks like a year and a half, and then had a major breakdown. So my guess is some selling is going to come in up here, at this supply area, because there's some big. I mean, I don't know that it's going to drive it away, but there's going to be some people that have been sitting underwater for a few years here that want to get out break even on this thing into this $10 area. But after that, yeah, I mean, it's all sky.
And they also, you should know, they finished an offering too. I think they had an ATM at the market offering. They finished that as well. So so that's good news. Why don't we look at Rigetti RGTI next?
Do you hear any stake in QBTS, the insider sale of roughly 18.8 million shares in December?
Ethan?
Oh, okay.
Insiders 18 million. I don't know.
Was that early December or like today and yesterday or?
I believe it was in the last 2 weeks.
Huh. So can you bring up RGTI?
Yeah, right there.
Very similar.
Yeah, very similar.
Well, to me, the problem with RGTI, if there's a problem, is you've got a weekly climactic on this. I mean, that is a straight weekly
Right.
exhaustion play with big volume. I mean, if this week's volume bar outdoes last week's volume bar, I mean, we're only 2 days into this week, and we've got whatever that is, 451 million. It's a lot. Anyway, I would just be cautious of this one.
Yeah.
That if you look in the book for an exhaustion move, that's what it looks like. Now, again, that doesn't mean it won't pull back and go higher, but yeah, that's just my comment.
To pull half off or something, pull half off and wait for something more.
Yeah, definitely don't get in here. If you're riding this, good for you.
I'd like to, based on, your observation earlier and what I know, I'd like to see it base at some level from which to form a platform to then spring higher. Because I don't like this pattern. I mean, that's the same pattern why I sold Palantir, but then look what happened. Oh, well.
Yeah, well, was Palantir like this?
Yeah.
Palantir pulled back, went up, pulled back, went up, pulled back. We didn't have 10 weeks. Like that's a little different. This thing is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks now, just a moonshot on huge volume. Palantir didn't do this. A little different.
That's true.
Yeah.
So,
but every day I
for
think
what it's worth, I'm not being negative about it. I'm just saying for what it's worth.
Well, you have a very good point.
But again, if you're in this, nice job, man.
Just for one quick second, just like a 1-second response. Do you have any sentiment on ARQQ, the Arctic Quantum?
ARQQ?
ARQQ.
I don't know that.
So that one's been getting a lot of traction lately, lots of volume, big money flow. And I was curious if you had insight into that quantum stock.
No, I've never heard
of it. They do cybersecurity, so.
Oh.
It moved in a lot of volume.
Well, let me ask you, do they have a quantum computer or is it just the word quantum in the name?
Well, I mean, that was why I was kind of asking you. Their product is a cloud-based quantum encryption. So.
Well, again, what does that mean? are they using a quantum computer?
Well, you're the expert, so I was asking you.
Oh, well, I've never, let me add it to radar and I
Okay.
can get back to you. Let's see.
Yeah, it's up 309% in 1 month.
ARQQ, was that it?
Yeah, ARQQ. 3 months, yeah, 352% up.
Okay, I'll research that. I don't know it.
This one's got plenty of room to move on the weekly, though. I mean, it's in a little supply area right now, but I
Wow,
mean, was this thing really $260 or have a reverse splits? I guess
this had a range today from 2450 to 33 in one day.
yeah. Yeah, this thing's active. I haven't seen it, but yeah, it did 2.5 million shares today.
Yeah, but you should look at D-Wave and Rigetti. They're doing for example,
Yeah, I've looked at Rigetti. I mean, I think I tried to short this QBTS one morning on a gap.
the Rigetti had 217 million shares traded today, and
Yeah.
QBTS had 170 million. So, yeah. So let's look at IONQ, our own Maryland play. Now, another thing that happened a week ago on Monday, they had an investor conference, and I attended that. I got an invitation. I think I sent it to you, Rob, and I sent it to Diedrich. I did
Yes.
attend that presentation. I did not like it, and I wrote IR a letter. I like to be an active, activist investor, but I didn't get anything out of it. They used too much terminology and I didn't know. And I said to them, first of all, when, if you're talking about your company, why don't you begin with a photo of what your quantum computer looks like? I mean, you gotta, explain things to the public. And they had all geeks on there. And, I didn't know what they were talking about. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. Yeah,
On a technical pattern, that's a pretty neat
Well,
Elliott.
yeah. I told them I got my letter up. My letter was entitled, "Please get me Peter." That's the name of the CEO. "Please get me Peter, you need me." And I said, the presentation is too confusing with too many undefined terms. It is a quote, "You understood," unquote presentation. Examples: what is systematic drift? What is containerized design? What is ruggedized? What is fast convergence to ground state of objective function? I mean, what does any of that mean? I couldn't get anything out of it. The slides I showed Zoe, my daughter, who's an expert on PowerPoint slides, and they were so busy. There was so much loaded onto each slide, you just couldn't, you didn't even have time to read it all, let her digest it. I mean, it was just, in my opinion, a poorly done presentation. So I didn't get anything out of it. I was disappointed, but I went ahead anyway, and I got in IONQ. Now I've owned it before at $8, but I didn't hold it. I've owned it twice early on. And then I bought it a few weeks ago at, trying to remember, it was like 1480, something like that. But now I just bought the bullet and went in, and so far so good. I went in really high, but I went in and I'm up. So knock on wood. But they're a good company, but they can't explain things. I mean, if any of you
Interesting to
know what
see when
any,
they get to 24.
what?
Just looking at it from a chart standpoint, be interesting to see when they get to 24.
Yeah.
What do you mean
24?
24?
They're 43 now.
Looking at that as an Elliott pattern, be interesting to see when it gets to 24.
24. You mean come back down?
Yeah, I'm looking at the right side of the chart.
Oh,
Okay.
You're still
So
gonna
it's-
win,
You know it's at 40, almost 44 right now, right?
right? Yeah,
Okay, so you mean come back down?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's an
That,
Elliott.
that would be a disaster.
It's a one and a 5-wave 3 coming back to a single 4 and up to a 5th. That's roughly what 1 is. So it should come back 50%.
Are you talking Elliott wave stuff?
Yeah,
Okay.
But do you all agree that if you're talking to an audience of people, investors, even investing company like a BlackRock, their typical analyst, are you going to say one of your features is fast convergence to ground state of objective function? I mean, you know, give me
I
a
gotta remember that.
I mean, come on.
that's
I
why
sent
it
him a
might come
letter.
back to 24.
Yeah, so I sent him a letter, guys,
People
because
will realize what they're saying is
Yeah.
gobbledygook.
right, exactly. And I just gave them some feedback because if they're going to continue to do that, they're not going to attract new investors, which would help my holdings. I mean, this is a business. To me, this is not a game. This is about making money. So I fire off these letters when I see people doing what I call egregious things. And that was horrendous. So anyway.
I might
Right,
try
so-
to share.
IONQ also has one of the things that sets them apart is that their cloud-based access it makes it easier for others to adopt their platforms. So the cloud-based access makes them unique, and also they have a patented error correction technique. So I think the patented error correction technique, along with being able to be adoptable through cloud-based access, makes it one of the reasons why it's scaling so much quicker than others.
Right. Thank you very much for those points. I meant to mention that IONQ is available through the cloud. So anybody through the cloud can access a quantum computer without having it in their, in their plant or their headquarters or wherever they're doing business. And I should mention that D-Wave also has something called LEAP, L-E-A-P, and that's also in the cloud, allowing people to use it. And also, you're right, the error correction is what it's really all about, is keeping those electrons stable so they don't shake, there's no vibration, and that the results are accurate. So the whole thing that they're working on, all these companies, is reducing error correction. And also, I forgot to mention qubits. So so now your sort of elemental form is known as a qubit. And the more qubits you have, theoretically, the more powerful you can be. I think eventually the solution is going to be to network the quantum computers like we network supercomputers today. So, so thank you for bringing those points up. I forgot to mention that. Do you want to look? You mentioned QUBT. We can take a look at that. This is QUBT, and they got a NASA contract today, which caught me off guard, because I'm still worried about that short report, which is still looming over the stock, and my letter to IR, which, let's see. So, see, they're awarded a contract by NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center to use its entropy quantum optimization machine to help the space agency's imaging. Financial terms were not disclosed, and let's see if there's anything more. They're going to support the space agency's advanced imaging and data processing demands. But again, they're calling it an entropy quantum optimization machine. And I'm just telling you, based on my research, it's not a quantum computer. They're just using the term. Until they prove to me different. I'll admit I'm wrong if I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong.
There's a lot of volume on that trade.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it may be just, it pulls people in, pulls people in, pulls people in.
All right. I sold on December 4th at $7.20. So you can see where I sold.
Yeah,
And
this
then-
thing's almost tripled in 2 days.
I know. And I actually bought 3,000 shares.
Does Musk have anything to do with this?
Not that I'm aware
Who
of.
knows?
He has his own problems today.
Yeah,
failing to report financial disclosures. So,
No, nobody cares about that.
but just, I forgot who was the one who mentioned this? Was this John? Was that you? Who on the call today mentioned this earlier?
Oh, I mentioned QUBT and the NASA contract, Sean.
Sean, right, okay. So,
And there's
Sean, I have,
apparently a DIRAT
no, I
free
have played
platonic.
it. I have played it 3 times. So, but I just, until this contract today, I don't trust it. I just don't trust it. I'm not convinced. They have these 2 contracts for their photonics, but I don't think they have the foundry built. And I saw in a PR, they,
I tend to agree with you.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I've seen some skeptical news surrounding that as well. So I agree with you on that.
Yeah. But I'm not saying I didn't play it because I study that every day.
Yeah, I've made quite a bit on it, but I'm worrisome now that the contract is not, I don't believe necessarily it's actually officialized, but although the news is out, but I'm not sure. But I tend to agree with your sentiment here.